Yo, what is up everyone? This is OJ over here from PlayerEssence and welcome to another Nintendo NX video, the NX hit list. Today we're going to be taking a look at Resident Evil 7, or the next major Resident Evil game. If you do not know, Capcom just announced that there will be a major push, or there will be a major Resident Evil game coming to something before March 2017, so I'm hoping that they have the Nintendo NX in their plans. If not, that's okay. It'll come to PS4 and Xbox One, so I'm thoroughly excited. But for this video, we're going to talk about hopefully it coming to the Nintendo NX, what I want to see in the next Resident Evil game, how I want it to be structured, story, characters. It's not going to be as long as it sounds, but it is going to be interesting, so let's go ahead and hop right into it. I think the first thing that we have to discuss is what characters are going to be in this game. And personally, for me, I don't know if it makes sense story-wise or anything like that, but these are the characters that I want to see as playable main characters in the game without unlocking any extra stuff. It would be Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, and Leon S. Kennedy. I want to see those three characters at one point together to where you can do co-op, possibly even three-person co-op. That would be interesting. You can have different skills and abilities for each person. I think that what they need to do with the story, they need to not break it up into multiple different campaigns. If there was one thing that I absolutely hated about Resident Evil 6 was all the different campaigns and kind of retreading some of the old ground with other people. I did not like that. I'd rather just have a singular storyline like Resident Evil 4, like Resident Evil 5. I think those two games, in my opinion, with in addition to Resident Evil 2, are some of the best Resident Evil games out there, and I really love how Resident Evil 4 structured it. But I like the co-op aspects, and I like what some of the stuff that Resident Evil 5 did that they actually brought into Resident Evil Revelations and Resident Evil Revelations 2. Now those games are a little bit smaller scale, so I like to see them go a step above those games, but they're not bad. I just want to see them go a little bit above, back to the Resident Evil 4, Resident Evil 5 scale. I do think that having a singular story with co-op in there, with good co-op, which they've done, would be really cool and would be great for the franchise going forward. I don't like that split story stuff, that split campaign stuff. That was not for me in Resident Evil 6, so hopefully they do away with that, and I think that they will. As far as controls and movement go, I think that Resident Evil 6 was a little too action focused. I mean, you had combat rules, you had freaking martial arts. It was like sleeping dogs out there for freaking Resident Evil 6, and I'm not sure if it should be that much. Maybe going back to Resident Evil 5 or Resident Evil Revelations, but Resident Evil 5 you can't move and shoot at the same time. Same goes for Resident Evil 4, so kind of ditch that, kind of just head it back to Resident Evil Revelations, to where you can do some combat attacks, you can do some of the stuff, but it wasn't so freaking crazy to where you were like Bruce Lee like you were in Resident Evil 6. So I like to see them kind of go with the Resident Evil Revelations balance as far as the movement and what you can do and all that, because I think they had the best out of all of the Resident Evil games. I think they balanced that the best. So Resident Evil Revelations as far as combat and movement goes. As far as weapons and upgrades, I think Resident Evil 6 and Resident Evil 5, Resident Evil 4, Revelations, they all do a good job. So having some sort of system that's similar to that, although Resident Evil 6 it's cool with the upgrades, but I just didn't like how some of the upgrades worked. It was kind of like skill slots at times. That kind of just like, I'm not so sure about that. I'd rather have them go back to how Resident Evil 4 and Resident Evil 5 did it, to where basically your guns were like an RPG. You just level them up at the merchant or whatever, and they get stronger. You can carry more ammo. Yes, it doesn't make sense, but it's still cool, and that's what makes Resident Evil in my opinion. Some of the abilities in Resident Evil 6 were just too much for me, so I like to see them go back to Resident Evil 4. I think that has a good balance for the gameplay and for the characters and just for how the typical Resident Evil works before Resident Evil 6 popped up. Story-wise, obviously you want to see a lot of zombies, you want to see a lot of T-viruses. They know how to make stories. Their stories are usually pretty good. Even Resident Evil 6 had a halfway decent story. It just wasn't really cohesive to me just because of all the separate campaigns. I know that it eventually got better with patches and updates, but the game just wasn't that great to me in how it segmented everything. I don't really like that. So story-wise, just kind of putting everything together, and I think that'll come together with the gameplay as you're going through that single campaign. You have your characters, you know what you're going to use. You can potentially switch off or play in co-op, so you know what skills to take advantage of as far as Leon, as far as his power and what he can do, and Jill, and maybe even exclusive guns for each character as far as what they can carry. That can help make some distinguishing between the characters as well, melee power, things like that. So I do think that there is a lot that they can do, and obviously people are going to have their opinions as far as what characters and stuff. I would love to hear you guys' thoughts in the comment section. Let me know what you guys want to see. Okay, now heading into graphics here, this needs to be a graphically intensive game. Now, Resident Evil has always been known for graphics. Going back to the PS1, those graphics were good in my opinion back when I first saw it on PS1. On the GameCube, they were amazing. I loved Resident Evil 4, I loved the GameCube ports, those were all really good. Even on the Dreamcast, Code Veronica looked great. Resident Evil has always been a game that set the standard for consoles. Seriously, it set a nice standard for third-person action shooter games. I love the graphics in Resident Evil 5. I thought they looked fantastic for Xbox 360 and PS3. I still think to this day that game looks amazing. And if you play the PC version on max settings, yo, that looks pretty hype as well. The Resident Evil Revelation games, not so much as far as graphics go. That game was a little bit more of a scale back in my opinion, just because it originally came out on the Nintendo 3DS, so it was a smaller scale project to begin with. And then when they came out with Revelations 2, that necessarily didn't look amazing just because it is, once again, a smaller scale project. But this is the major one, so I want to see them take whatever they did in Resident Evil 5, which has the best graphics for the most part, Resident Evil 5 and Resident Evil 6, and take that to the next step. It needs to look amazing. I do think that they should try to go 60 frames per second, but considering how they've always done with the previous games, it'll probably be 30, just so they can get that graphical detail and effects. And maybe the PC version will be 60 frames per second. But either way, I just want the game to look amazing. I want the game to play amazing. If they can do 1080p 30 on consoles, then 1080p 60 or more on PCs, or if they can do 1080p 60 on both, fantastic. I know that the ports for Resident Evil 4, 5, and 6 all on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One are 1080p 60 frames per second and look amazing, but those still have like the PS3 360 feelish graphics. They look more like the PC versions of the game, so hopefully they take that and they just notch it up just a bit more just to get that graphical detail that people are going to be expecting for this current generation title. And I would love to see what they can do on the Nintendo NX. Hopefully Capcom and Nintendo are working on something together. We do know that Capcom and Nintendo have a great relationship between Monster Hunter, Ace Attorney, and the games they've released already. I do think that there is something in the works there. Hopefully that is the next Resident Evil game. Alright guys, that basically wraps it up for this video here. Let me know what you guys want to see in the next Resident Evil and what you want to see if it's on the Nintendo NX. I would love to hear your thoughts in the comment section below. Alright, that basically wraps it up for this video here. Make sure you hit that like button if you did like it. Lets me know you guys want more content like this going forward in the future. And also subscribe to PlayerEssence for more news, reviews, trailers, tips, and tricks, and everything on Resident Evil and gaming. Thank you so much, and we'll see you for the next video. Peace.